Dust lifted in pale curtains around Lillian Parker's wagon wheels as she stirred her old mare along the main street of Great Bend, Kansas. Her heart struck hard against her ribs, desperate hope, because this was the last town before she had nothing left to sell, nowhere left to go. The summer heat of 1878 pressed down without mercy on wooden buildings lining the road. Their weathered faces told of brutal winters and harder lives, much like her own these past months since her father died and left her with nothing but his debts. And the quilts her mother had stitched before consumption claimed her 3 years prior. She had been moving town to town, ranch to ranch, selling those beautiful pieces of fabric art one by one, watching her inheritance shrink with each sale until only 7 remained, folded with care in the wagon bed beneath a canvas tarp to shield them from the punishing sun. Lillian was 22 years old, unmarried, running out of options in a world that showed no kindness to women alone. Her hands, calloused from gripping reins across so many miles, tightened on the leather as she spotted a large ranch at the edge of town. Its fences stood well-maintained. Its buildings wore fresh paint, the kind that whispered prosperity. The sign at the entrance read, "Yates Ranch." Something in her chest drew tight, a knot of fear braided with determination, as she turned the wagon down the long drive toward the main house. A man stood on the porch, tall, broad through the shoulders. He wore a dark vest over a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing tanned forearms. He watched her approach with an expression she could not read from that distance. One hand resting easy on the porch railing as though time meant nothing to him. As she drew closer, details sharpened. Dark hair that needed cutting, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes that were a startling shade of blue even from yards away. Lillian brought the wagon to a halt. She tried to steady her breathing before speaking. __quote _0 __. The man descended the porch steps with an easy grace that belied his size. She realized he was likely in his late 20s, the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from working beneath the prairie sun. "1," he said. His voice ran deep and warm, like honey stirred into tea. "2." Heat rose in her cheeks. She became suddenly aware of her appearance after weeks on the road. "3," Warren asked gently. Something in his tone made her throat tighten. __quote _4 __. She did not know why she was telling this stranger her troubles, but there was something behind those eyes that invited honesty. Warren nodded slowly, then gestured toward the back of her wagon. 5. Relief poured through her as she climbed down, her legs slightly unsteady after hours of sitting. Warren was there at once, offering his hand to help her, and she took it, felt the calluses on his palm that matched her own. His grip was strong, but careful. He released her hand the moment her feet met the ground, though she thought something flickered behind his eyes as he did. She led him to the wagon's rear and pulled the canvas tarp aside, revealing 7 quilts folded beneath, each one a masterpiece of color and pattern, the kind of work that consumed months to complete. A wedding ring pattern in shades of blue and cream, a log cabin design in warm browns and reds, a star pattern that seemed to shimmer in golds and whites, 4 others equally beautiful. Warren reached out and touched the fabric of the top quilt with surprising reverence. "These are extraordinary," he said quietly. "Your mother was indeed remarkable. I learned from her who learned from hers. Each stitch was made with love and care." Lillian heard the tremor in her own voice. She cleared her throat. "I am asking $12 apiece, though I know that is dear." Warren looked at her with those penetrating blue eyes. "How much for all 7? Lillian blinked, certain she had misheard. "Sir, all 7 quilts. How much would you take for the lot?" Her mind worked fast, numbers falling into place. $84 would clear the last of her father's debts, give her enough to start fresh somewhere new, perhaps one of the growing cities where a woman might find respectable work. Quote, 12, she heard herself say, offering a discount she could barely afford because something in her wanted this man to agree, wanted these precious pieces of her mother's legacy to remain together. In a place where they would be valued. Warren did not pause. $84 is what you asked originally, and $84 is what they are worth. I will not cheat you, Miss Parker, even if you are willing to cheat yourself. The kindness in those words nearly broke her composure entirely. She watched him lift each quilt from the wagon with care, handling them as though they were spun from glass rather than sturdy cotton and batting. He carried them inside, making several trips while she stood by the wagon. Uncertain of the protocol for such a situation, when he emerged from the final trip, he drew a leather wallet from his pocket, counted out the money with deliberate care, pressed the bills into her hand. His fingers brushed hers, and warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "Miss Parker," he said. Something almost hesitant lived in his voice, at odds with his confident bearing. "It is late in the afternoon, and you have traveled far. Would you stay for supper? I have a cook who prepares far more food than one man needs. It would be a pleasure to have company at the table." Lillian knew she should refuse. Propriety dictated that a single woman should not dine alone with a single man, especially not in his home. But she was tired, so very tired. The thought of one more meal of cold beans eaten beside her wagon felt unbearable. More than that, she found herself wanting to stay, wanting to know more about this man who bought all her quilts without haggling, who looked at her as though she was something precious rather than a nuisance. "I would be honored, Mr. Yates," she said softly. A smile transformed his face. It reached those blue eyes, creating crinkles at the corners that made her heart skip. "Warren, please, and let me help you stable your horse. She looks as tired as you do." They worked together in comfortable silence, unhitching the mare, seeing her settled in a clean stall with fresh water and hay. Warren's barn was immaculate. It spoke of a man who took pride in caring for his animals. Lillian counted at least a dozen horses in the stalls, all healthy and well tended. "Quote 18, she asked as they walked back toward the house. "Quote 19. He spoke with such enthusiasm that she found herself smiling. Warren held the door open for her. She stepped into a house far nicer than she had expected. Polished wood floors, sturdy, well-made furniture, touches that spoke of a man trying to build a home rather than just a place to sleep. Books lined the parlor shelves. She spotted a chess set on a small table by the window. Quote, 21, quote, she asked, gesturing toward the pieces. Quote, 22, quote. He led her through to a dining room where a long table could seat 12 with ease. Quote, 23, quote. As if summoned by her name, a plump woman in her 50s emerged from what must be the kitchen. Wiping her hands on her apron, she stopped short when she saw Lillian. Her eyes widened with surprise and what looked like delight. "Miss Parker, this is Mrs. Henderson, who keeps me fed and the house from falling into complete bachelor disorder." "A pleasure, Miss Parker. It is about time this house had a lady in it, even if just for a meal. I will set another place and bring out the good china. Please do not go to any trouble. There is a guest room where you can freshen up if you like. I imagine the road dust gets into everything. Take your time. Supper will not be for another half-hour. You look lovely." "Thank you, and thank you for your hospitality. You did not have to do this." "I know, but I wanted to. It is not often I have the pleasure of interesting company. How long have you been on the road?" 3 months. I started with 22 quilts, all that my mother had made over the years. I sold them one by one, sometimes 2 to a family if they were prosperous. Each time I let one go, it felt like losing a piece of her all over again. "And after you sell the last one? What then?" "I do not know. I thought perhaps I would go to Kansas City or even further east, find work as a seamstress or in a shop. I can read and write and do figures, so perhaps I could keep books for someone. I have not let myself think too far ahead because it frightens me, the uncertainty of it all. What if you did not have to go anywhere? What if you could stay here?" "I do not understand. Great Bend is a growing town. We need teachers, shopkeepers, seamstresses. A woman with your skills and education could make a good life here. I own several buildings in town that I rent out. One of them sits empty right now. A small place, perfect for a dress shop or a quilting business. I would rent it to you at a fair rate. Nothing you could not manage with your skills. Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because I know what it is like to be alone and struggling. I came here 5 years ago with nothing but the money I had saved from years of working other men's ranches, taking the jobs no one else wanted, saving every penny I could. I was 23 years old and determined to make something of myself. But it was hard, harder than I can easily explain. If someone had offered me a hand up instead of a handout, it would have made all the difference." Before Lillian could form a reply, Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway. Supper was ready. They crossed into the dining room. Fine china caught the chandelier light. Silver gleamed against white linen. The meal carried no pretension. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans pulled from what had to be a kitchen garden out back, and bread still warm enough that steam rose when Lillian broke it open. They ate, they talked, and somewhere between the first bite and the last, Lillian found herself saying things she had never spoken aloud to anyone. Her father's farm in Missouri, her mother's quiet grace, the way her father reached for the bottle more and more after her mother passed, until the bottle was all that remained. She told him about the debts, the farm sold out from under her to settle them, the long months on the road afterward. Nothing for company but her own thoughts and her mother's quilts folded in the wagon bed. Warren listened the way few men do, with his whole attention fixed on her words. He asked questions that proved he was tracking every detail, not merely waiting for his turn to speak. When he offered his own story, it came without self-pity. Youngest of 5 sons on a Texas ranch, not enough land to split 5 ways, and he knew it young. He left at 18, spent the next 5 years working until his hands cracked and his back ached in ways that never fully healed. "I wanted something that was mine," he said. His voice dropped low, tight with conviction. "Not handed to me, not borrowed, earned. This ranch is that dream made real. Every fence post, every head of cattle, every horse standing in that barn. Years of labor compressed into wood and flesh, land. "I cannot fully express what it means to me," he said, "but I am proud of it." "You should be proud," Lillian told him. "What you have built here is remarkable." The evening stretched longer than either of them noticed. When Lillian finally glanced toward the windows, darkness had swallowed the world outside. The glass reflected their faces back at them in the lamplight. Two people leaning slightly toward each other across a table neither wanted to leave. She should go. Back to her wagon. Back to the hard ground and the cold. But her body would not rise from the chair. Warren read the hesitation on her face. "It is late. I would not feel right about you sleeping in that wagon when there is a perfectly good guest room upstairs, empty and waiting. Mrs. Henderson lives in her own cottage on the property. It would be entirely proper. She can help you settle in, bring you whatever you need." Lillian knew the correct answer was no, but months of sleeping on packed earth or wagon boards had worn her resolve thin. A real bed, a feather mattress. The word escaped before wisdom could catch it. "If you are certain it would not be an imposition." "It would be my pleasure," Warren said. The warmth behind those words reached his eyes, and she believed him completely. Mrs. Henderson materialized as though she had been listening for exactly this outcome. She practically glowed as she led Lillian upstairs. Fresh nightclothes appeared, soft cotton that must have belonged to Warren's mother, or perhaps a sister. They smelled of lavender. Mrs. Henderson helped Lillian unpin her hair and brush it out, long strokes that loosened the tension of the day. "That Mr. Yates is a good man," Mrs. Henderson said, working the brush through a stubborn tangle. "Best employer I have ever had. And I have had a few in my time. Fair, generous, never once raised his voice at me. Always says please and thank you, as if I am doing him some great kindness rather than the job he pays me for." She paused. "But he is lonely, that one. This big house with no one to fill it." Heat crept into Lillian's cheeks. "He seems very content with his life." "Oh, content enough. But content is not the same as happy, dear. A man needs more than a successful ranch to make a life whole." Mrs. Henderson caught Lillian's gaze in the mirror, a knowing smile. "But I am an old woman who talks too much. You rest now. Tomorrow will come soon enough." After Mrs. Henderson pulled the door shut behind her, Lillian climbed into bed. The feather mattress swallowed her weight like a cloud after so many nights on hard ground. She expected to lie awake, her mind too crowded with the day's events, with the confusing pull that Warren Yates exerted on something deep inside her chest. But exhaustion won. Sleep took her mid-thought. She woke to sunlight pouring through the window glass. Coffee bacon. The smell drifted up from below, rich and warm. For one disoriented breath, she could not place herself. Then memory flooded back, and with it, a flutter low in her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. She dressed quickly in her own clothes. Someone had brushed them clean and folded them on the chair beside the bed, and made her way downstairs. Warren stood in the dining room with a newspaper spread before him, coffee steaming at his elbow. He rose the moment she crossed the threshold. "Good morning." "I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in months," she admitted. "Thank you again for your kindness." They settled into breakfast, and Lillian found herself studying Warren over the rim of her cup, noticing what exhaustion had hidden from her the evening before, the way his hands, broad, roughened by work, cradled the delicate china with surprising care. the way a strand of dark hair fell across his forehead when he leaned toward the paper, the way lines gathered at the corners of his eyes when he smiled at something Mrs. Henderson said, bringing out another plate of bacon. After the meal, Warren offered to walk her through the ranch. She accepted without hesitation. They moved through the barn together, and he introduced each horse by name, told her their temperaments, their habits, their small rebellions. There was Silver, a grey mare, gentle enough for children. Thunder, a bay stallion, spirited and proud, Warren's personal mount. And a young colt, still learning manners, still testing boundaries. "I am trying to build a reputation for quality horses," Warren explained, as they watched the colt prance circles in the paddock. "Not just working animals, horses with the temperament and training to be trusted in any situation. It takes time and patience, but it is worth it." "You have a gift with them," Lillian observed. Even the skittish colt settled when Warren drew near, his voice dropping low and steady. "My mother used to say I was part horse myself, the way I preferred their company to people when I was young." He offered a self-deprecating smile. "I have gotten better with people over the years, but horses are still easier in many ways. They do not lie. They carry no hidden agendas. What you see is what you get." They walked beyond the barn to where cattle grazed on open range. Red and white shapes scattered across the grassland, stretching to the horizon. Warren pointed out his property lines, the creek that ran year-round, the line shack where hands sheltered during roundup and calving season. "It is beautiful," Lillian said. She meant it completely. Something about the vastness of the prairie, the endless sky pressing down, made her feel both small and woven into something far larger than herself. "It is home," Warren said simply. The way he looked at the land, with such quiet pride and deep affection, made Lillian's heart squeeze tight. They returned to the house as heat settled over the day, and Warren laid out the proposition he had mentioned the previous evening in more concrete terms. He produced papers showing the building in town he owned, a 2-story structure on Main Street, shop space below, living quarters above. The current rent was modest. He offered her the first month free to get established. "I cannot accept charity," Lillian said, even as part of her ached to say yes. "It is not charity. It is a business proposition. I need a reliable tenant who will care for the property. You need a place to start fresh. If you make a go of it, I profit from steady rent. If you do not, well, the space would sit empty regardless. You would actually be doing me a favor." "You are very persuasive, Mr. Yates." "Warren," he corrected gently, "and I am only persuasive when I believe in something." "I believe in you, Miss Parker." "Lillian," she said. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "If we are to be business associates, you should call me Lillian." Something passed between them in that silence, a recognition that this arrangement carried weight beyond commerce, beyond convenience. Lillian saw it in Warren's eyes, felt it in the way her own pulse quickened when he smiled. "Very well, Lillian. Do we have a deal?" She took the hand he extended, his grip warm, strong, and she felt as though she was stepping off a cliff into open air. "We have a deal." The days that followed blurred together in a rush of activity. Warren drove her into town to see the building, and it proved even better than she had dared hope. The shop space was generous and well lit, tall windows that would display her work beautifully. The living quarters above were cozy and clean. A small kitchen, a bedroom, a sitting room, everything she needed. News travelled fast through Great Bend. A seamstress and quilter was setting up shop. Before Lillian had even opened her doors proper, women appeared. They introduced themselves. They asked about services. They lingered. Warren helped her order fabric and supplies through his own business contacts. Got her prices she never could have managed alone. "You do not have to do all this," she protested one evening. They sat together, going over invoices in her new shop. "I know I do not have to. I want to." He looked up from the papers. Those blue eyes held no lightness in them now. "You must know by now that my interest in your success goes beyond that of a landlord." Lillian's breath caught in her chest. They had been circling this thing for days. The way their hands found reasons to brush, the way conversations stretched past midnight without either noticing, the way she caught him watching her when he believed she was not looking. "Warren, I do not want to presume anything." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You have been nothing but kind to me. I would not want to mistake kindness for something more." He stood, came around the table to where she sat, knelt down so their eyes were level. "Lillian, from the moment I saw you drive up to my ranch, dusty and determined and trying so hard to be brave, I felt something I have never felt before." His voice was low, deliberate. "These past days, getting to know you, seeing your intelligence, your strength, your gentle heart, that feeling has only grown stronger." He paused. "I know it is too soon. I know we have only just met. But I cannot let another day pass without telling you that I am falling in love with you." Tears rose in Lillian's eyes. Not grief, not sorrow. Relief. Joy flooding in where fear had lived. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I have been trying to tell myself it is gratitude or loneliness. But I know it is more than that." She swallowed. "When I am with you, I feel safe and seen and valued in a way I never have before." Warren reached up, cupped her face in his rough hands. His thumbs swept gently across her cheeks, catching the tears that had spilled over. "May I kiss you?" She nodded. Words would not come. He leaned in slowly, gave her every chance to pull away. When his lips met hers, it was gentle, sweet, full of promise. Something inside Lillian that had been locked away for years broke open, light and warmth and hope rushing in where only darkness had been. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "I know this is fast, but I am a man who knows what he wants when he sees it." His breath was warm against her skin. "I want a future with you, Lillian. I want to court you properly. Flowers and dinners and long walks in the evening. I want everyone in this town to know that you are mine and I am yours." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "And someday, when you are ready, I want to marry you. Fill that big, empty house with love and laughter. Maybe children if we are blessed." "Yes," Lillian said. She was laughing through her tears now. "Yes to all of it. I want that too. So much." The weeks that followed were the happiest Lillian had ever known. Her shop opened to immediate success. Women came from town and the surrounding ranches. Simple mending, elaborate dresses, custom quilts with patterns that told stories. She hired 2 young women to help with the simpler work, taught them the skills her mother had taught her, found deep satisfaction in passing on that legacy. Warren courted her with a sincerity that made her fall deeper every day. He brought wildflowers from the prairie, took her on picnics beside the creek that wound through his property, taught her to ride so they could explore the land together on horseback. They played chess in the evenings, games stretching for hours as they talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds, each other's hearts. The people of Great Bend watched their courtship with approval, a certain matchmaking pride, too, as though every last one of them had played a hand in bringing the couple together. Mrs. Henderson was particularly pleased. She went out of her way to create opportunities for them, always properly chaperoned, but with enough privacy for the conversations that mattered. 3 months after Lillian had first driven up to the Yates Ranch, Warren took her back to that same porch where they had met. Summer had given way to early fall. The air carried that particular crispness that spoke of changing seasons. He guided her to the railing where he'd stood that first day. Her wagon track still marked the dirt of the drive, faint but visible. "Do you remember when you came here?" Warren asked. His arm circled her waist, natural as breathing. "I remember being terrified and trying not to show it. I remember thinking you were the most handsome man I had ever seen, and being embarrassed by the state I was in." He laughed, rich, warm, unhurried. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, traveling alone, selling your mother's quilts to survive. I remember wanting to help you, but not knowing how without seeming presumptuous. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 99, underscore, underscore. And I remember the moment you smiled at me, really smiled. It felt like being struck by lightning. We have come a long way in a short time. We have, and I want to go further still. Lillian Parker, you came into my life when I did not even know I was waiting for you. You have brought joy and purpose and love to days I thought were full enough already. You have shown me that a house is not a home without someone to share it with. You have made me want to be a better man, the kind of man who deserves you. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the love of my life? Yes, yes, Warren, I will marry you. I love you with all my heart. Happy, happier than I ever dreamed possible when I drove up to your ranch that day. I was just hoping to sell a few quilts. I never imagined I would find a home and a husband and a whole new life. I bought all your quilts so you would have to stay longer. I told myself it was because they were beautiful, which they are. But really, it was because I did not want you to leave. I wanted more time to convince you to stay. You did not need to convince me. I think I was half in love with you before I even stepped down from that wagon. I want children. I want this house full of noise and laughter and little feet running through the halls. How many? As many as we are blessed with. 2 or 3, or even more if that is what happens. I want them to grow up knowing they are loved, that they are safe, that they can be anything they want to be. They will have the best mother in the world. Quote, 117. Patient and kind and strong. I hope they get your eyes and your gentle heart. Quote, 118. And I hope they get your strength. Quote, 119. Your integrity, your way of seeing the good in people. A son. We have a son, Warren. He is perfect, absolutely perfect. Outnumbered now. Do you ever regret it? Quote, stopping here, staying, marrying a rancher instead of heading to the city and carving your own path. Not for a single moment. You bought every quilt I had that day, but what you gave me was so much more. Love, partnership, children, purpose. You gave me a home, not walls and roof, but a place where I belong. How could I regret that? I got the better end of it. You came to sell quilts, and I gained a wife, a partner, a love that has made every day of these last 10 years finer than the one before. You are my heart. Lillian, you always will be. What are you thinking about? How blessed I am. How grateful that my wagon broke down outside Great Bend all those years ago. How thankful that you bought every one of my quilts and asked me to stay for supper. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 134, underscore, underscore. Best purchase I ever made. Best supper invitation I ever extended. Quote, 135. Grandpa, can you teach me that knot you showed me last time?